You're not lazy, you're not broken, and you're not weak. If procrastination were about time, planners would have fixed it. If it were about motivation, coffee would have cured it. But procrastination isn't a time problem. It's a psychological battle between comfort and fear. Every time you delay, something deeper is speaking: fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, or fear of becoming who you said you wanted to be. Today, we're not talking about productivity. We're talking about why your mind resists your potential and how to take your power back. Procrastination is one of the most misunderstood behaviors in the human mind. We label it as laziness, a lack of discipline, or poor time management, but that label is not only wrong, it's damaging. Because when you believe you are lazy, you stop searching for the real cause. The truth is, procrastination is not about avoiding work. It is about avoiding emotions. Every task you delay carries a feeling attached to it. Fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of discovering that you're not as capable as you hoped. Your brain, designed to protect you from emotional pain, steps in and says, "Not now." It chooses temporary relief over long-term fulfillment. That moment of scrolling, sleeping, or distracting yourself isn't weakness, it's self-protection. This is why intelligent, ambitious, and creative people often procrastinate the most. Their minds imagine consequences more vividly. They feel pressure more deeply. So instead of confronting discomfort, they escape it. Not because they don't care, but because they care too much. Procrastination becomes a shield, one that blocks pain in the short term, but silently steals confidence, momentum, and self-trust. When you understand this, the shame begins to loosen its grip, and clarity finally replaces self-blame. Your brain did not evolve to make you successful, it evolved to keep you safe. Long before dreams, goals, and ambitions existed, survival was the priority. Avoid pain, conserve energy, seek comfort. That ancient wiring still controls much of your behavior today. Even in a world where survival no longer looks like running from predators. Now, the danger feels emotional, not physical. When faced with a difficult task, your brain scans for discomfort. Effort means uncertainty. Uncertainty feels like risk. So the mind looks for escape, something easy, familiar, and immediately rewarding. That's why your hand reaches for your phone. That's why distractions feel irresistible. Dopamine rewards you for comfort, not courage. And every time you choose the easy path, the brain learns to repeat it. This isn't a personal failure, it's biology. But biology doesn't care about your dreams. Your goals demand effort, patience, and discomfort, things the brain naturally resists. Greatness requires moving against instinct, doing what feels uncomfortable in the moment because you believe in something bigger than temporary relief. Understanding this rewrites the story. You're not fighting laziness, you're retraining a brain that has been choosing comfort for thousands of years. And that battle begins the moment you decide discomfort is no longer the enemy. Behind almost every moment of procrastination, there is fear, quiet, invisible, and powerful. Not the kind of fear that makes your heart race, but the kind that whispers doubts into your mind. Fear of failing after trying your hardest. Fear of succeeding and being expected to maintain it. Fear of being seen, judged, or exposed. So instead of facing that fear directly, you delay. Procrastination becomes a psychological escape. As long as you haven't started, you haven't failed. As long as you haven't finished, no one can criticize the result. This is why perfectionism often walks hand in hand with procrastination. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right time, the right mood, the right conditions, but what you're really waiting for is safety, and safety never comes. Your mind convinces you that delay is preparation, but it's actually protection. Protection from disappointment, protection from rejection, protection from confronting the possibility that the outcome might not match your expectations. So you stay stuck in planning, overthinking, and hesitation. Yet every delay procrastination is not just about tasks, it's about identity. Deep inside, there is a conflict between the person you have been and the person you know you could become. Every meaningful action threatens the old version of you, and the mind resists that threat. Because growth doesn't just add something new to your life. It demands that something familiar be left behind. Your current habits protect your current identity. Even if that identity is frustrated, unfulfilled, or stuck, it is still known. The future version of you requires risk, discipline, and consistency. It requires you to act differently, think differently, and show up differently. And that feels dangerous to the ego. So procrastination steps in as a delay tactic. A way to stay emotionally safe while telling yourself you still have potential. This is why starting feels heavier than continuing. Once you act, you can't pretend anymore. Once you commit, you are responsible. Action forces you to confront the gap between who you say you were ever. Is a strange comfort in staying stuck. Even when your current situation hurts, it is predictable. You know this pain. You know how to survive it. Growth, on the other hand, introduces uncertainty, and the mind often fears uncertainty more than suffering. This is where self-sabotage is born. Procrastination becomes a way to choose familiar pain over unfamiliar progress. You delay not because you don't want better, but because better requires stepping into territory where you don't yet feel competent, confident, or in control. The brain clings to routines, even harmful ones, because they offer a sense of certainty. Struggle feels safer than the risk of change. This is why you sometimes sabotage opportunities right when things start to matter. When success gets close, fear gets louder. Your mind says, "At least here, you know who you are." Procrastination protects that identity by keeping you in the same emotional loop. Same excuses, same delays, same regrets. But every time you choose comfort over action, the pain doesn't disappear, it deepens. It turns into frustration, self-criticism, and quiet disappointment. You begin to lose trust in yourself. And the most dangerous part isn't failing, it's getting used to a life that feels smaller than what you know you're capable of becoming. Procrastination doesn't just steal time, it quietly erodes who you believe you are. At first, it feels harmless. I'll do it later. I still have time. But each delay sends a message to your subconscious. My words don't matter. Over time, that message becomes your inner truth. The real cost is self-trust. When you repeatedly break promises to yourself, confidence begins to collapse from the inside. You stop believing your own intentions. Motivation fades, not because you don't want change, but because your mind no longer trusts you to follow through. That internal disappointment hurts more than any external failure. Procrastination also builds invisible weight regret. Not loud, dramatic regret, but quiet, heavy thoughts that show up late at night. Thoughts of wasted potential, missed chances, versions of yourself that never had the chance to exist. This emotional burden grows with every postponed decision. And perhaps the most painful cost is identity. You start to see yourself as someone who doesn't act, someone who almost tries. That story becomes familiar, comfortable, and dangerous. Because once you accept that identity, procrastination is no longer a behavior, it becomes who you think you are. Before you can change procrastination, you have to see it clearly. Discipline without awareness turns into self-punishment, but awareness creates choice. Every time you delay, something specific triggers it: an emotion, a thought, a situation. Procrastination never appears randomly. It follows patterns, and those patterns tell a story about what you're avoiding. Sometimes the trigger is emotional. A task makes you feel inadequate, overwhelmed, or exposed, so your mind searches for relief. Other times it's situational: certain environments, certain times of day, certain people. You don't procrastinate on everything equally, and that difference matters. It reveals where fear lives. The moment you catch yourself avoiding, pause and ask, what am I trying not to feel right now? That single question shifts power back to you. You stop fighting yourself and start listening. Awareness softens resistance. It removes the shame and replaces it with curiosity. When you observe your patterns without judgment, you weaken their control. You begin to notice if mind doesn't change through intention, it changes through action. Waiting to feel motivated keeps you trapped, because motivation is a result, not a requirement. The brain learns from what you do, not from what you plan. That's why small actions matter more than dramatic promises. When you take even the smallest step, you interrupt the cycle of avoidance. One page, 1 minute, one imperfect attempt. That action sends a powerful signal to the brain. I am capable of starting. And once you start, resistance weakens. Momentum begins to build, not because the task becomes easier, but because fear loses its grip. Small actions retrain your nervous system to tolerate discomfort. They teach your brain that effort doesn't equal danger. Each step creates a new association. Work no longer means threat. It means progress. Over time, this rewiring replaces avoidance with confidence. This is why consistency beats intensity. You don't need heroic discipline. You need repeated proof that you can act despite discomfort. Every small win repairs broken self-trust. And slowly, almost quietly, your identity begins to shift from someone who delays to someone who moves forward, one deliberate action at a time.